That was all great, the atmosphere, the buildup, and everything. But how many times have we all seen, okay, here's this great buildup for an event here, and then nothing happens, and it just fizzles out. That big third inning last night was like, okay, everybody's ready to, this place is just ready to go off. And I wouldn't shock me if I drove by there on the way home and there's still people partying. But you needed something in the game to actually happen, too. And all you got was 4 home runs in 1 inning, Jody. I mean, that was just unbelievable.
Yeah, it was crazy. And Perdomo, that one just gets out. And then it was just unbelievable. You're kind of thinking, how is this even happening right now? Because, and then Marte, I mean, just the crowd, what will be etched in my mind, and I'm sure for you as well, is just the way the crowd erupted after each one. Perdomo's, it kind of felt like, okay, it's a home run. It's 1-0.
Yeah.
It's good. We got a run on the board. But then, Cattell hits it, and that's why I think the crowd just went that next level in his reaction, where he kind of stood there and then looked in the dugout.
2 is better than 1.
2 is better than 1.
All right. I like where you're going with this.
And then Christian and Lance Lynn, I mean, I looked back at the pitches on the game day on the MLB feed, and I mean, they were all between 91, between 88 and 91, and they were all right around the middle.
Yeah.
And
it looked like batting practice.
He either doesn't have command, or I don't know what's going on here, because he was just throwing them down the middle for the most part. And then Walker, I was so happy for him because, he came up with the bases loaded a couple times in LA, and he hit the ball. I mean, the one time it took Outman back on his heels, but it was good to see him do what he does. That's what he does. That's his role on the team. And then Moreno, though, and I know Greg Schulte talked about this as well, is just that was amazing because everyone's stunned, and he runs around, and whether it was foul or not, everybody celebrating was so cool. You're like, oh, okay. So, but then for him to do it again on the very next pitch, which was like a millimeter away from the other pitch, very middle. And first one it was a little bit more middle, and he took it the other way, and then the other one was a little bit more inside, and he just pulled it. And what an unbelievable moment. And it's like Hazen after the game, I said, what were you thinking? And I go, did you? And he he's like, I don't even know. I said, did you black out a little bit? He goes, I think I did. He goes, I black out 20 times during a game. But he said, he's like, well, I've never seen it. And he's like, well, no one has. It's history. And so it was another thing that everyone can talk about, just whether you were there or even just watching it on television as a Diamondbacks fan. I mean, that was unbelievable. Makes the Archie Bradley triple look like kind of,
yeah, I mean, that's
a little flair,
And it's funny you say that because it's like we've been talking within the context of D-backs history. That's an iconic moment instantly. But really, it's like I'm starting to think to the Valley Oop and some of the other great moments just in Valley sports history. Somebody needs to come up with a name for the Moreno, specifically the Moreno home run, to have it pulled back and then hit the very next pitch, no doubter, to a different part of the park. And maybe somebody has. But somebody needs to come up with some sort of name.
It's kind of like the feeling behind it. For me, the emotion behind it is I won't be denied.
Yeah.
So obviously it's not a catchy thing, but it's kind of like.
All right, we're taking Twitter suggestions for the third inning. I'm going to go with the Fab Four.
The Fab Four. That's good.
All right.
All right.
You don't like it, Luke?
No, I do like it. I don't have a problem with the Fab Four, but I want one specifically for Moreno hitting a home run on the next pitch.
Maybe it's just 4 because they were teeing off on Lynn, right? It's just like a golf reference.
Too. We should ask Schulte this when he was on. Schulte remembered the last time it happened.
I loved it. This run has been so improbable. It's like what's going to happen next is the only thing that I could hear that would shock me would be Greg Schulte. I feel like that second, are you kidding me, was going to be like a Tory. Are you kidding me?
Yes, that would shock
Gov
me.
would never do it, but
Schulte remembered the last time it happened. In regular season, it's happened. It was 13 years ago. Remembered that it was back to back to back to back.
Remembered the players that hit them.
Remembered the players in the order that it came.
He's got a great memory. I mean, just all these years of D-backs baseball, and he's just the encyclopedia. So
he's told that story too. I think he's told this on the air, where in the off season he'll just, because he has all the old scorecards, right? So he'll just pull a book down for here's the 2013 season. He'll just kind of look through it, and he said start to read it and you remember that exact game. So that probably helps. It was for the record, Jody. It was Adam LaRoche, Miguel Montero, Mark Reynolds, and Stephen Drew who hit those 4 home runs.
Yeah. Interesting. I kind of LaRoche when I think of 20. That was what year?
2010.
2010. Yeah, I was going to say because that was actually that was a year that the bullpen was horrible. I mean, so they had some good hitters, but that was when the next year they brought in KT to revamp the bullpen, and they did, and that's why they won. That's part of the reason why they won the division. But just they had some pop. LaRoche definitely had some pop. He brought, he always had a good number of RBIs and whatnot. But and I think back with this to 07 now, since it's the last time the team's been to the NLCS, and I don't know if there's a lot of comps there. I know how long ago it is because when I went into that clubhouse, that was my first time in a celebratory champagne beer-filled clubhouse. But I was a couple months pregnant, so it was kind of funny. Like, I was just like, what am I doing in here? And now my daughter is now 15, so that tells you how long ago it was.
The 2007 Diamondbacks, they won the division. Now, again, they ran into that buzzsaw of a ridiculously hot Rockies team, which, Jody, I don't know if you heard it earlier, this D-backs team reminds me of that Rockies team. I was a broadcaster for that Rockies team, so I see a lot of similarities of a team that's getting really hot at the right time. But that 2007 D-backs team, and a lot of D-backs fans will remember this, like they had Brandon Webb, and Eric Burns was a real good player, but Justin Upton was very young. If you go back and you look statistically at that team, like what guys were hitting and what they were in that rotation behind Brandon Webb, they were greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, it was anybody, anytime, I think was the slogan, if I recall. But the funny thing is, Tim, that you say that, and this speaks to the fact that it is collective. Augie Ojeda, that's who I remember interviewing in there. He had a big game in that series, or had a big series. Chris Young did well in that series, I believe, as well. But yeah, I mean, it's role players, guys that maybe don't put up, like when you think about Perdomo not really having many homers. What did he have, 5 or 6 homers in the regular season? Mm-hmm. Six. And then hitting the home run to kind of start that inning. That's what it's all about. And if you look at World Series MVPs, you see that too. You see Cody Ross or even Jeremy Pena last year. It's like he bats 8th or 9th now, or just maybe 7th. It's guys getting hot at the right time, and it's just the collection of guys. It's not always your star players. I mean, Bryce Harper looks like, a juggernaut right now, right? Like at the plate. But, you just don't know, because sometimes pitchers will focus so much on those guys, and these other guys maybe get an extra pitch to hit, something like that. We see that all the time. But in the playoffs, it's those other guys that have to step up.
It's also easy to pitch around 1 or 2 guys in a lineup. But this D-backs lineup, 1 through 9 right now, they're all dangerous. Curtis Granderson talked about that on the pregame show yesterday. Anybody at any time in this lineup can hurt you, and Perdomo showed that to everybody in the country in the beginning of the 3rd inning last night.
I'm trying to think who we were talking to, Jody. I think it was one of the last 2 days, so you were in here, and we've had so many D-backs guests, but I remember asking somebody, is there anything left that would surprise you in one of these games? And they were like, no, not at this point. Well, I tell you what we saw last night in the 3rd inning was still surprising. They found a new way to surprise.